Hello everyone, and in today's video I'm going to be discussing all of the series I've read since 2010. These are going to be all the series that I have completed, not necessarily read from. There's some of the series I've read 1, 2, even 3 books from, but I never completed the full series, so those will not be in this video today. And there's a few I'm a little iffy on whether I would count the newer books in the original series, but other than that, I have 18 series to share with you today. I'm going to just run through them. A lot of them are pretty well known, and then maybe talk a little bit about my favorite book in the series and whether I like the series overall / would I recommend it. And without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off with a true classic, we have the Hunger Games series by Suzanne Collins. So the Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay. My favorite book in the series was Catching Fire, and everyone knows what this is about. This is one of the series that I'm not sure if I'm counting the new book that's slated to come out in May onto the series, because obviously I haven't read that yet, but I think this original trilogy stands by itself, and that's kind of just in the same world, or at least that's what I'm going off of for this purpose. And this is a series that really got me into reading, other than Twilight, which I read in like 2008 or 2009. This was a huge factor into the YA, like dystopian genre. I read Divergent during this time, didn't finish that series because I didn't really like it. I also read Uglies during this time, didn't finish that series either, but this was a huge stepping stone into YA books, so I'm really excited that I read it, and it's a classic. I'm excited to read the next book in this series world, but I am a little cautious about it, not gonna lie. The next series I have to talk about is a duology, and it's the If I Stay duology. So If I Stay and Where She Went. I preferred Where She Went, which was a very controversial opinion at the time, but if you don't know what this series is about, it's about this girl whose family gets into a car crash and she's put into a coma, and she's trying to decide if she wants to stay alive even though her entire family has passed away. It sounds particularly dark. I don't remember being that emotional about it, but I liked this fine. I don't know if it would still stand up today, but at the time I really enjoyed it. And like I said, this one was pretty good. This one really got me. So those are really the only 2 series I read prior to discovering BookTube in around 2014-2015. So this next series is the first series that I read because of BookTube, and that is the Selection series by Kiera Cass. I was so unbelievably excited to read this series. There's 3 books in the original trilogy, so the Selection, the Elite, and the One, and then I've also read the kind of companion series, but still technically the same series, which is The Heir and The Crown. I loved this series. It was such a fun series for me. It's basically just a Bachelor style TV show thing to become royalty, so fall in love with this prince. It's so good. I just loved it so much when I read it. I want to reread it because it's so like, it's just such a light read. It's just so easy and fun and heartwarming. And I think this is when I first really started getting into like ships and fandoms, and so this is really nostalgic to me. This series will always have a really special place in my heart, and I think I'd still recommend it, especially to any younger viewers, but I think it's still fun for everyone to read, especially if you like The Bachelor. The next series I read was kind of told in serials, and that was the Never Never series by Colleen Hoover and Taryn Fisher. I read the first one in like a physical copy, but the next 2 I believe I read on ebook. So it was like told in parts, but I guess it was kind of technically one book, but I figured I'd include it anyway. This told the story of these 2 people that were in a really like long relationship, and then they forget each other, and it kind of just figures out like why did they wake up and they don't remember each other. This was really fun at the time, but I don't know if it would stick up today. It was kind of unfulfilling at the end, but it's still fun. I definitely recommend ebooks. I think they were like 99 cents when I read this, so for the whole story you could pay like $3, so it's something. This is the thing that I read. The next series I read and loved, and I'm probably going to reread very soon, is The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. I also started The Mortal Instruments. I have yet to finish that series, but The Infernal Devices are so good, and if you don't know what they're about, good luck trying to explain the Shadowhunter world to you guys. I'm really sorry, I don't even think I could. Demon fighting. This is takes place in old London. I don't remember what year. 1800s, 1700s, something like that. And it's just like so good. You don't really hear people talk about stuff like this anymore because I mean no one reads like this anymore. I mean they've read like her newer series like the Dark Artifices, and she's coming out with a new series, the something something, a Chain of Gold, something, I don't know, but still very good. Would highly recommend this even though it's like an older series. And then along the way I read my favorite series of all time, which is To All the Boys I Love Before trilogy. To All the Boys I Love Before, P.S. I Still Love You, and Always and Forever Lara Jean. Absolutely one of my favorite series. You probably know about them, but holds a special place in my heart. I'm so glad I read these. Next up is a one I contemplated putting on this list, but you know what, I'm putting it on here, and that is the OG Shatter Me trilogy. So Shatter Me, Unravel Me, and Ignite Me. Since this has ended, this ended in 2015 maybe, around then, there's been multiple other books that come out. Restore Me, a novella or two, and then maybe even another book after that. Not caught up with that, but I did read this OG one. I didn't like the first book, but then gave both the last two books 5 stars. They were fantastic. I love this series. It's one of my favorites. Don't ask me why I haven't finished it yet. I have a lot of series to catch up on. Next series I read was another duology, and that was the Wrath and the Dawn duology. So the Wrath and the Dawn and the Rose and the Dagger. Gave this first book 5 stars. I was absolutely obsessed with it when I read it. I think this is when I started more talking about books on my channel, because I remember distinctly talking about this book a lot. But this is a 1001 Nights retelling. Really fantastic. I think I gave the second book either a 3.5 or a 4 star. It was kind of disappointing after the first book, but still a pretty stand-up duology, and I really enjoyed the writing, which is hit or miss for some people, but I really loved it. So I have to pick up more from Renee Audier. So next, another series, and I'm like, is it finished? Is it not? I couldn't tell you, and that is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. One of my favorite series of all time, which is Court of Thorns and Roses, Court of Mist and Fury, and A Court of Wings and Ruin. And then I count that as the original like trilogy books in that series, and then A Court of Frost and Starlight seems to be some sort of bridge book between the original trilogy and like what the new trilogy is going to be. I even considered like putting The Mortal Instruments up here because I read the original trilogy, which I think was originally what all it should be, and then there was like more books added on, it felt like, at least, but I didn't do that. Obviously the series is one of my favorite of all time. I talked about it enough. We don't need to hear me talk about it again. 5 stars to all these books except the novella because it sucked. Next, a series I definitely don't talk much about on my channel, and that is the Themis Files. So Sleeping Giants, Waking Gods, and Only Human. I listened to these all on audiobook in 2017 or 2018, and I guess I just never got around really to giving a review about it, or you didn't see it much because I don't recommend it a lot because it is adult sci-fi and it's very different, but I would highly recommend these audiobooks. It's basically the story of like this woman finding this hand in the woods when she's a child, and then later on there's like sort of an alien sort of interaction. Very hard to explain. Fantastic audiobooks and fantastic series. I believe I gave this middle book 5 stars, and then I gave the first and the last book 4 stars, so it's still a really solid series and I would still highly recommend it. Next, I have like a companion novel series, but I figured I'd include it anyway, and that is Dumplin' and Put In by Julie Murphy. This is a companion novel. It's contemporary. It really just centers around this small town, and it really centers around the main character in Dumplin', who is a plus-size main character looking to join a beauty pageant after her mom was like the superstar of the beauty pageant back in the day, and she's trying to like prove her wrong. It's really good. I think I gave this 4 stars, and then Put In, which I think I preferred, 5 stars or 4 stars as well. Overall, it's a really good series. Like I said, they're both pretty individual. You could probably read either of them without reading the other, but I figured I'd include it here because technically it is a series. It's listed as a series on Goodreads. That's kind of what I went by. And then a fact I just want to acknowledge here. The next 7 series I have to list are series that I've caught up with or read entirely in 2019. So it's really exciting for me because I really tried to make an effort to finish series up this year because I had started so many series in the past, and I continuously have so many series on my shelf that I know that if I don't start getting through it quickly, I'm going to never get to them. So these next 7 series I finished this year, or past, I guess 2019 now, past year, but I'm really excited to go through these. And you've heard about these in other videos, so I will go through them pretty quickly. So first up, we have the Crazy Rich Asian series. So Crazy Rich Asians, China Rich Girlfriend, and Rich People Problems. A fantastic series. 5 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars. Absolutely loved. So fantastic, so fun. A dip into, I guess, just adult fiction in general, and I would highly recommend it. Next, I have the Villains duology, which once again, not entirely sure if there's going to be more books in this series, but I have Vicious and Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. Absolutely adored this book. I gave it 5 stars. I read it in 2018. And then Vengeful, I unfortunately gave 3.5 stars. It was pretty disappointing in comparison to the first novel, but I would still recommend the first book. And I believe like there's things that are left unsaid in this book, but I feel like you could just read this one and be pretty satisfied with the ending. But this ending is a little less satisfying, but there might be more books in this series. I couldn't tell you. Next up, a new favorite series of all time, and that is the Cruel Prince series. So the Cruel Prince, the Wicked King, and the Queen of Nothing. I gave this first book 3 stars, and then I gave the next 2 books in the series 5 stars. My new favorite books of all time. You've heard me talk about them enough. Fantastic books, highly recommend. So glad I read these all in a short period of time and made it so enjoyable and something that I really would like to keep up with this year. Next up, another duology companion, Letters to the Lost and More Than We Can Tell by Bridget Kemmerer. Another one of my favorite books of all time. Highly recommend. Contemporary stories, beautiful. If you want to hear more about them, watch my favorite books of the year video. Talk about them a lot there, talk about them a lot in other videos. Check them out, beautiful. Next, the Fifth Wave series by Rick Yancey. I like to pretend that the other books don't exist. This is a great first book, but the last 2 books in the series really let me down. Read this book if you want. It is a very good book, and it can be pretty fulfilling. I feel like highly recommend this book. Don't read the rest of the series. This next series is the only one I'm kind of cheating on, and that is the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard. I read the first 3 books in the series, and then I read like 25% of War Storm, which is the last book in the series, and I had to DNF it because I hated it. I would recommend you don't read this series unless you really, if you've read, I don't even know, does Victoria Aveyard even have any other books? If you've read other Victoria Aveyard books, or if you really feel like you're gonna like this, you can read it, but I would really recommend you don't, because I feel like it wasted my time and I don't want it to waste yours. So yeah. And then last but certainly not least, the Raven Boys Quartet by Maggie Stiefvater. The Raven Boys, the Dream Thieves, Blue Lily Blue, and the Raven King. My favorite book in this series was Blue Lily Blue, but I gave the first 3 books in the series 5 stars, and I gave the last book 4 stars. It's not a new favorite series, but it's still really well done. I talked about it a little bit more in all the books I read in 2019, so I will link that up above. I guess overall I was expecting something different, or I was expecting more, and while I still gave them 5 stars, which I'm still reevaluating in my head, they're not a new favorite, but I would still highly recommend it. It's very different from normal. It's fabulism, very interesting, and yeah. So that is all the series that I read from 2010 to 2019. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you've read any of the series that I mentioned in this video down below. Let me know what you thought of them. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you very soon. Bye!